And who are you?
Well, here we are again. Years later. And it's over. Welcome to the Game of Thrones live discussion from me, your steward, Denethor. Now, I did this several years in a row, and I did more of them. And as promised, I wanted to do a recap and share my thoughts on Season 8. It's been requested several times. I see one of you in chat that emailed me, hello, hope you enjoy this nonsense. I should preface this by saying, oddly enough, there's a number of people here in the live chat that have never seen Game of Thrones for some reason. This won't be enjoyable for you, but also lots of spoilers. Like, spoilers for the whole series, for the book. I'm just going to talk until I don't feel like speaking anymore. And, Season 8. I'm not a professional, by the way. Just know I'm not a professional. These are just my thoughts and opinions. Season 8 came and went. The show is over. It wasn't great. The last two seasons have been not great for me. Season 8 had a couple moments, but mostly I didn't love it. And, you know, trying to talk about this without having seen it on the internet to have other people influence my opinion is hard. It's really fucking hard to live in a vacuum when it comes to Game of Thrones, because everyone talked about it. There's so many social media posts about it, and every other place on the internet. ASOIF, Free Folk, Game of Thrones. Each one, different levels of understanding and accepting. But the truth is, I knew something was off because I wasn't excited for the season. And I think that was a problem with Season 8. Season 7, rather. Season 7 led into Season 8 with this weird tone of just unfortunate decisions and writing. I liked some of Season 7. I felt like it had, it had some good stuff in it, and I loved the scenes where a lot of the principal characters came together. The scene where they go north to capture a zombie was ridiculous, and I still, rewatching that, I just rolled my eyes so many times. Now, it's only a TV show. It didn't ruin my life. But I became a little less excited. For those that are unaware, and I'm going to do a Q&A at some point, like we can talk about specific things I miss, if anyone is still here and not sleeping by the time I'm done speaking. I became obsessed with this series because it was so good in the first couple seasons, and I ended up reading the books and getting the World of Ice and Fire book. I did a lot of research and well, I say research, but I watched videos. I read some articles, and I liked the history of the world. I'm obviously a big fan of Lord of the Rings. George R.R. Martin did a good job building his world in a similar way, in a different way, and a lot of the writing in the earlier seasons came directly from the books, which they ran out of. Apparently David and Dan, the writers, wanted to work on Star Wars, and so they opted for shorter seasons. HBO was like, hey, we can give you budget. This is just what I heard. We can give you budget. We can give you more episodes. David and Dan were like, no, we want to go do Star Wars. And without being too cynical about them ruining Star Wars or whatever, I think that this show needed better writers and more time, because it did not stick the landing. I actually liked some stuff in the last episode. Some of it felt pretty... I was like, okay, this is kind of where I saw it going anyway. That's all right. And some of it felt dumb. But at the moment, my overall feeling is like when I went into Season 8 from Season 7, which was just, I didn't care very much. something that I deeply cared about, where every week I would watch this show with bated breath. And it was like really intense to see what was going to happen, especially after the books, because I had no idea Jon Snow was going to come back. I mean, we all knew he would. Um, Cersei blowing up the Sept. A lot of plot lines were really interesting. The Hodor stuff. And I feel like season 6 was really the last great season with some problems, but still overall, I watched every episode like, holy shit, this is good stuff. And that's how I felt the first couple seasons. It was really, there's a reason the show is as popular as it is. It's not just sex and stabby through the face. There's a lot of great character moments, a lot of really great characters, great acting, great casting, costumes, set design. The CG was mostly great throughout the whole run of the show. And this went from one of my favorite shows to somewhere around, it's all right. And that's quite an accomplishment. So I still feel as meh as I did going into season 8. And, I really, when season 7 ended, I was like, oh, okay, I guess we'll do this. And then I watched it again before season 8. And I was like, oh, they got a lot to wrap up in 6 episodes. And I still felt like I had the same problems. Now, some things get better with age. Some things get worse with age. Season 7, my opinion has remained exactly the same, I think. It was just really, it felt like the characters were no longer smart. Or that, if we could take it a level back, a step further back, I feel like the writers wanted cool stuff to happen and cool meetings to happen. And considering they didn't have any more book to go on, they just said, okay, well, we need to get these characters from here to here. So we'll have Gendry run across the entirety of the northern part of the wall, and he'll just sprint back. He's the best runner, even though no one knows that. A lot of dumb shit with Arya. I mean, there's always been dumb shit with Arya's plotline, since she got to Braavos. But so that trend continued into season 8. Now, watching season 8, episode 1, I was a little hopeful. There was some callbacks to the first episode of the series. The music was back. They kind of paralleled, watching King Robert get the breastplate stretcher. And coming to, Winterfell. And there was some really, there's some nice little callbacks. And also Sansa was like, Your Grace. She wasn't happy about it. And I just thought, well, God damn it, Snoo, why are you so angry? And now I kind of understand, like, well, she did a pretty good job at suspecting some bullshit. But that first episode was okay of season 8. I didn't hate it. I thought it was like, okay, well, we're back into the swing of things. We're getting ready. There's some preparation happening. And it ends with Jaime looking at Bran from across the courtyard. And I was like, oh, this is going to get interesting. And it kind of never does. Episode 2 of season 8. And again, my memory isn't perfect for this. So I'm not going to remember everything. I'm not going to remember like specifics of the episode. I even have the wiki up just in case. But episode 2 was actually good. I feel genuinely, and maybe this is too cynical, genuinely episode 2 of season 8 was the last really good episode of Game of Thrones before shit started going off the rails. It was a lot of good character moments, a lot of good stuff with Jaime. Brienne got knighted. So a lot of stuff I wanted to see, even if getting there was kind of weird. Also, should be noted that episode was written by Brian Cogman and not David and Dan. So, a really decent episode and lots of good stuff with, the drinking and the joking around and just the calm before the storm. And I like the character moments. And I like, just anything going on with the characters coming together that haven't seen each other in a while was really good in that episode. And Bran just stares. So many missed opportunities with that character. you know, I don't know if he can see the future or just what's around him, but I feel like Bran, if he let all this happen, it's just there's so much to unpack, and I'm gonna try to unpack it a little bit. But Bran just kind of let so much happen. He's got these powers. The most he talks about is a wheelchair from like hundreds of years ago with Tyrion, and that's it. It's like, dude, you're omniscient. Help us. So bizarre storylines. They didn't know how to. I know George R. R. Martin was like, this character's tough to write for. How do you write for something for a character that could ruin the whole plot because he's omniscient? And obviously, David and Dan, writers of lesser caliber, couldn't figure it out. So they just kept him quiet and creepy most of the time. But yeah, I mean, so the first two episodes I didn't mind too much because they were like, okay, this is the build up. We're getting ready for this giant battle. Some good stuff with Theon. Theon returns to Winterfell. I like Theon's character arc pretty much all the way through. I feel like he is one of the characters that did not get assassinated from a character standpoint, where he went from this confused kid who didn't know really where he belonged in the world because his father is clearly not Ned Stark, and instead he has to fight like these two sides of himself, the Ironborn, side, which is a little psychotic and also really deeply based on like, it's like, what's your merit as an Ironborn? How can you be, as terrifying, well, maybe not terrifying, but how can you show your quality, your worth? And for them, it's pretty extreme. The Ironborn are kind of fucked up. To the honorable, really, I guess, protagonists of the story, probably the most honorable family in the entire show, the Starks. And so Theon had to struggle with that. He fucked up, and then he paid the karmic debt for it almost immediately, and he got his sausage lobbed off, and just all these things that happened to him. And then he kind of continues to struggle over the seasons with being a weak, scared person, totally ruined by Ramsay, to finding his courage and then protecting Bran. I like Theon's arc. I feel like, again, he didn't really have a lot to do at the end, but it was a good, satisfying conclusion to the character. It would have been nice to see him live, of course, but that's just, wishful thinking. The characters need to die. Episode 3, that leads us to episode 3, which is the Battle of Winterfell. I liked it. It was The Long Night was the name of the episode. I liked it when I could see what was happening. Really dark and like muddy episode. Not to say it was like unwatchable, because you can turn up your contrast a bit, and you can see what's going on, and some of the battle stuff is really good. There were some strikingly beautiful shots, like when the dragons are above the clouds. But for all the dumb, mindless stuff, there were so many stupid things. They put the fucking trebuchets in front of the Unsullied. They fired the trebuchets like 3 times after the Dothraki charge in. Cool shot, by the way. Makes no sense. If Melisandre did not show up and light their aurochs on fire, their swords on fire, they would have all died anyway, because there's no chance. What the fuck were they going to do? They knew Dragonglass was the only thing that could kill a White Walker, but they charge and then they die. And we think all the Dothraki are dead, but it turns out only 50% of them died. This is where the season really started getting, like, I was still a little hopeful, but it just kind of fell apart for me. The battle was cool. The trebuchets were destroyed because they were placed stupidly. The fighting just felt so weird. Like, there's a sense of geography to some extent, but then, like, you would get a shot of Jaime fighting 4 White Walkers. It would cut away from him and then cut back, and there would be like 2. And then it would cut away from him, cut back, and then he would be overwhelmed against a wall with like 7 more. And by the end of the episode, it looks like the only people left in Winterfell are the 7 or 8 principal cast members. There's definitely some cool shots, some cool moments. Really great stuff with Jorah, who protected Dany, who also her plot armor was off the charts. The stuff with the dragons was cool, and I'd like the Night King surviving the fire. I mean, again, if you're looking for battle stuff, this is a good episode for that. And some of the Miguel Sapochnik directed it. He directed most of the best battles in the series, and it worked on some level. But then it just, again, the characters surviving stupidity, the poor strategy, like just leaving everyone out in the field. There were so many things that could have been done better, I feel, and it's okay because the ultimate point of this was that the White Walkers never really mattered. Now I get the counter argument that, oh, well, they weren't, the real problem. The humans were the real bad boys. The humans were the real bad guys of the series. Politics is the real bad guys, not the White Walkers. But on some level, we built these things up. And Jon just, tries to run away from a dragon. And then, Arya just ninjas past them, which I was more or less okay with. And she kills the Night King. It's funny because Arya kills the Night King, Jon kills the Shite Queen. It's like poetry, it rhymes. I I felt like the whole thing with Arya running from the shadows could have been done a little bit better, just because they wanted the surprise of like, oh shit, there she is. But it was confusing, and also I know people complained about like, how did she get past all the other White Walkers? I know that's what her training was about over all those years, but again, it's a little weird. I accepted it though because I figured, all right, okay, battle's over. That's okay. I don't need Jon to do everything. I don't need our hero to do everything. Arya is one of my favorite characters early on, and I was happy that she used the dagger to kill the Night King. The dagger that almost killed Bran was used to kill the Night King to save Bran. It's like poetry, it rhymes. But it was somewhat satisfying. And then, of course, the other problem I had was that part of me felt like, well, this can't be it. Maybe the White Walkers could have won, and then they could have marched south to King's Landing and then have been defeated, so that, it would have proved to the realm that the threat was real. But because everything ended and, happened and ended in Winterfell, it was like, well, hang on a minute. Cersei could just lie and say that nothing happened. So that was, it just was a little anticlimactic for the big bad that just dies very quickly. And, other stupidity was Dany and Jon not using the dragons right away, because that would have been way more helpful, and a lot of soldiers died. Again, I get it. It's you got to film a cool battle scene. But I also feel like this show hadn't lost what made it good and more realistic over the years. Even during the battle scenes, a lot of the battles were great. Battle of the Bastards got it was kind of more realistic, a little silly at times, but mostly grounded and great. Battle of Blackwater was fantastic. I mean, a lot of the big stuff, Hardhome, really hit harder for me than this. But so I was a little deflated on that episode. A lot of people lived. People were like, why didn't more people die? Well, that's later. So yeah, I guess, the other thing was Ghost ran out with the Dothraki and then was just like gone for the rest of the episode. The Dothraki who were killed then just didn't show back up until they needed them. Yeah, so again, it wasn't, I don't hate the episode 3. I just felt like, well, shit, okay. I thought maybe they would, bring back the Night King, whatever. Okay, so then the Last of the Starks was the next episode, right? And they're celebrating, they're, boning. There's Daenerys is like, hey, Gendry, do you want to be Lord of Storm's End? So, and then, they're praising Daenerys. Jon raises a toast and everyone's like, yes, Dany, you're great. So that was fine. But then, like, Bronn shows up with a fucking golden crossbow because the character is popular. Bronn should have not been in this season. more than a couple lines. Let's be real, if at all. But the character is popular, and so David and Dan let the gallery in. What I mean by that is, don't play to the gallery. It's something that David Bowie once said, and it's been going around Twitter again. And I feel like they played to the gallery, and they let the fan base seep into the show. And so Bronn is here, and he sneaks into Winterfell unharassed whatsoever with a giant golden crossbow. Who's this stranger? I will let him in. Weird. Maybe he lied. I don't know. Regardless. And then he says some bizarre shit. They tries to make a deal with them, and it just felt so forced. It was like, oh, we got to get these characters together one more time. Again, less about character motivation, more about moments that the writers wanted in the episode. Then there's the secret of Jon's heritage, which ultimately ends up being not as important as you'd imagine. But Dany begs Jon. She's like, please, don't tell anyone. So my issue with that was, okay, well, you could okay, Dany, fair enough. You want to rule alone. But you're in love with this dude. Why not just become king and queen? And, instead of begging Jon, just rule together. And again, I guess I understand the character motivation had to get to a certain point because George R. R. Martin told them what the ending was going to be. But a lot of the steps to get Dany there felt really quick, kind of forced. So, I don't know. And then, oh God, the horny pirate. Well, hang on. There's a sex scene that people fucking lost their minds about. People getting their eyes poked out, their faces bludgeoned. But there's a somewhat uncomfortable sex scene with Arya, and people lost their goddamn minds, even though she's like 22. So that was a fun day on the internet. And then, of course, the Hound decides to leave. He talks to Sansa, which I like that moment. There was some good stuff with Sansa and the Hound. I liked the fact that Arya wanted to, finally do what she had to do before the battle. Or rather, that was... Wait, sorry. That was episode 2. I'm sorry. This is the episode where Gendry was like, I love you, Arya. I don't know. It's not what he sounds like. I'm sorry. I got my events mixed up. Gendry... kind of proposes to Arya, and she's like, nah, dude, that ain't me. So I kind of like that. That worked. There was, then of course, the worst part was Jon, not petting Ghost. And again, people lost their shit in this episode 4. I'm talking about the last of the Starks. So Ghost went to Tormund, and he did not pet the boy, and that is not good. Of course, there is something worse than that, which is Euron Greyjoy, the worst adaptation of a character aside from the Sand Snakes. This character in the books is an eldritch, pirate man who has sailed around the world to places people haven't been, who does blood sacrifices, who has a horn that could possibly destroy the wall and control dragons. It's this creepy motherfucker, weird Lovecraftian, really Bloodborne-esque type character. And then in the show, he's just like, yeah, I want to fucking stick my thumb up the queen's bum. Mate, who the fuck are you? The actor, by the way, was not happy with this character. The actor was like, oh yeah, the book you're on is so much better. But he did the best he could. I hated the horny garbage pirate so much. He was so terrible. But then they're hiding behind the rock. And again, I guess you could make up all kinds of different reasons why Dany didn't see it. Because she's scouting ahead. The dragon Rhaegal was almost injured, was almost killed in the previous episode, but it's flying again. 3 perfect scorpion shots in a row. 3 perfect shots kills the dragon suddenly because shock value. Not because it made any damn sense. From really far away. First shots, 3 perfect hits, kills the dragon. Turns out they were hiding behind a rock. Oops. I gotta be honest, I saw that and it was like a little shock. I was like, oh my God. And then if you just think about it for a couple of minutes, it falls apart. I get the show has always been shocking, but the shocking moments felt character motivated or real. Like when Ned was killed, it was like, oh, because of this, because this, and this. When Joffrey was poisoned, it's because he was a piece of shit, and Lady Olenna had to do that. And for Marjorie, other big moments like the Hodor thing, it's, supernatural stuff, but it still worked. And it was surprising in a way that I guess subverting your expectations, I've been joking about on stream, has become one of my most hated phrases lately, because I think it's good to subvert sometimes, but you can do it in a better way. You know what's a good subversion of expectations? Frodo, I got to do it, take a shot. Frodo getting to Mount Doom, getting to the edge of the volcano, about to throw the ring in, but he can't because the ring won't let you. That's just the way it is. Everybody knows the rules. You can't just throw the ring into the volcano. So Frodo, he puts it on. He's corrupted by the ring at the very last moment. What happens then is Gollum shows up, who's been stalking the characters the whole time anyway. They struggle. Gollum bites his finger off. And in the book, Gollum dances and then slips. In the movie for Lord of the Rings, Gollum tackles Frodo, or rather Frodo and him are kind of struggling to get the ring because they're both corrupted by it. And then the ring's own malice destroys itself. Both are great, by the way. I like both because, Frodo is corrupted enough to want to grab it back from Gollum, and they just slip because they're on the edge of a fucking volcano. And to me, that's like, it's perfectly in line with the characters and with the motivations of the ring. And also, it's a surprising ending in a way because, holy shit, and then Gollum dies with the ring. It's really good. I mean, Lord of the Rings, it does end in a kind of a happy fairy tale way to some extent, to a large extent, but it's satisfying. The character arcs are satisfying. A lot of these character arcs in Game of Thrones and in Ice and Fire are not. And that's a different discussion. We'll get there in a minute. I'm not saying I'm totally like sour grapes about all of it. I'm not bitter about all of it. But Jaime and Brienne, this is the episode where they elope. And it makes sense. It works because Jaime, it's a little weird the way it goes down. I'm going to take my shirt off. What? Okay. It's hot in here. What? So I feel like they still had this attraction and respect. And, it's Jaime's first time with someone other than Cersei and Brienne's first time with anyone. And I liked it was a nice moment, and I'm glad it happened. I'm just sad that Jaime relapsed. And when he found out what was going on and he left for King's Landing, I said to myself, he's going to kill Cersei. That's a character. That's the Valonqar prophecy, which there's so many prophecies and so many things alluded to that never happen. Fine. Okay. Okay, we'll get to the Jaime stuff in a bit. I'm all over the place. There's a lot, class. There's a lot to get to. But my thoughts on the horny pirate no-scoping Rhaegal, it was just awful. I hated it. And again, this character, Euron Greyjoy, just knows exactly when to show up. He's got the perfect timing. He knows how to get to where he's got to get to be a perfect nuisance to the main characters whenever the plot needs him to be. So that is another thing that pisses me off. The character sucks. The actor did the best he could, but then he gets to where he needs to go and does exactly what he needs to do. And it's just awful. So then Dany swoops down to try to get him, and then she backs away. So then my Sunday is dead. They kill her, and that's enough for Dany to lose her shit. Same thing with Grey Worm, which is fine. I mean, there's stuff online where people are like, she could have grabbed Cersei and jumped off with her. She could have killed herself. I would have preferred if Missandei, who was not, bound to anything, jumped off the wall herself. That would have been a more fitting way. But she died in chains, and it sucks. And they were upset. We didn't need Rhaegal to die, because I'm going to actually throw a suggestion at you that could make the plot a little bit better in the next episode. Rhaegal, the dragon, did not need to die by the horny pirate. I get that you want to establish the Scorpions as a threat, but it's stupid. And you're stupid, David and Dan, because you didn't need that, because the pirate is terrible. So the next episode is the big controversial one, and it's probably the one I hated the most all season. The bells. Oh, God. I'm resisting the temptation to do a Brian Johnson Hell's Bells voice, but I'm just going to say this. The episode had everything it needed to become a shit show, and that's what happened. You know the plot. If you've seen Game of Thrones, I don't need to recap entirely, but I'll just say it's Tyrion, finds Jaime captured. He's like, hey, get Cersei to ring the bells. Dany, if you hear the bells, the city has surrendered. No need to kill more people. And everyone, like the army is there. The Golden Company is there for Cersei. There's going to be this giant battle, this giant war. But if you hear the bells, that means they surrendered. Now, I was convinced Jaime was going to get in there, kill Cersei, and then have the bells rang. That would have been cool. But I get that that's not how life works, and I get that things are terrible. And instead of a bittersweet ending like George said we would get, we got a lot of terrible shit that happened. The bells ring, the Lannisters surrender, the Scorpions and the entirety of Euron Greyjoy's fleet all destroyed, no problem, plot armor removed, no threat whatsoever from the Scorpions anymore. And then Dany waits. She hears the bells. She looks at the castle, the Red Keep, and she goes, "You're a bad bitch, Cersei." And then she just decides to nuke the entire city. Now, listen. I understand that Cersei was a pain in the ass. I understand she killed Missandei. I understand that she killed the dragon indirectly. And I know that Jon Snow did not engage in sexual congress with her previously, because now it's kind of weird. He's feeling like kind of weird about this whole thing. She's his aunt, and there's like other aspects of things going on. And Jon, he's just like, listen, I cannot have congress with you. So she does not have congress, and then she just gets grumpy. Varys, I won't get into just yet, but Varys tried to poison her earlier in the episode. Turns out Varys had the right idea all along, because the plot needed him to. Varys got kind of fucked up because there's a different plot line in the book that I'm going to discuss that could have fixed a lot of this. But anyway, okay, so Dany, who is now very upset, hears the bells and she goes mental and she nukes the city, ruining 7 seasons worth of character development. Now, I know what you're thinking, some of you that would very much like to say, hey, that's okay because their clues were there. The clues were there. I don't think there were enough. I think we needed more time with this character to become scornful, hate, and feel real hatred, and something more needed to happen. We didn't get that. The motivation did not do it for me. And she was someone who chained up her dragons because they killed one kid. She's the one who did not take the offer to go to Westeros from the slavers because she didn't want slavery to come back. She was the Misa. God, I can't believe I just said that. She was the person who did all these great deeds and did so many amazing things, and she was like the bringer of peace. And then suddenly, it's okay for her to just justify in her head that she's going to kill men, women, and children who are fleeing for 30 full minutes, by the way, or more. In the show, it just keeps happening. It just keeps happening. By the way, I love how the city explodes whenever the dragon hits it, but the Iron Throne took like 20 to 25 full seconds to melt later on. But that's a different story. It's just it's fine. So I actually am okay with Dany turning to the dark side. I think it's a really I think it's a good idea, actually. And I know that that's the ending that George wanted. It wasn't earned in the show. It was so quick. Now, I have a suggestion on how to make this a little bit better. Maybe a little bit better. Which is, here's my suggestion on how to make the Daenerys evil Palpatine transformation, a little bit more acceptable. Instead of Rhaegal dying in the previous episode, Rhaegal burns the city with her. She won't let Jon ride him because Jon has no love for her. As she said, the people of this town, this country, this city have no love for her. So she's not going to let Jon ride. She's pissed. Jon's like, whatever, my queen. I don't want it. We'll talk about that. Jon's heritage, by the way, went nowhere, just about nowhere, except it threw a wrench in their relationship. And it led to people questioning her, and that, sent her further over the edge. But so here's my suggestion. Rhaegal is still alive. They capture the city. The bells ring. Dany is relieved that she doesn't have to kill more people or anyone that's not a soldier. And she's sitting there on the building with Drogon. And Rhaegal's flying around. And at the last second, right after the surrender, several other scorpions are revealed from wherever. Could be the keep, could be wherever. They all aim for Rhaegal, who is now caught off guard, who is resting. Because he's injured, remember? He's resting. He's stationary. And they kill Rhaegal in a fucking mess. And, the fire stuff happens like it did in the show, and the blood, and it's gross, and it's awful. The dragon falls, it's dead. This is after the Lannisters surrendered. This was Cersei's plan to kill the queen, except they chose the wrong dragon because it was far away or for whatever reason. And, a fake surrender. So Dany, of course, seeing this, goes mental. Not only was she constantly attacked and her claim to the throne has been, usurped by this Cersei, her baby just got killed. After surrender, she has no honor, Cersei Lannister. Then she snaps. Maybe she doesn't roast everybody for 30 full minutes, but she kills a lot of men, women, and children on the way to the Red Keep. And then she, does what she does. But that to me would have been maybe, again, I'm not the writer. I'm not going to sign a petition to remake the season. If you're going to do the evil Dany thing and you have to do it quick because you want to work on Star Wars, one way you could do it is by that suggestion, because at that moment, her snapping would at least have some more motivation other than Solomon Grundy mad. So that's my idea. And I feel like it was just an opportunity that was missed because they wanted to have a shocking moment in the previous episode and give Euron Greyjoy some clout and also make the Scorpions dangerous. Again, this isn't about character motivations. This isn't about the characters writing the story. It's about a number of things that were predetermined to happen and they need to get the characters there, which is why the writing got so shitty in the past 2 seasons and why so many people are complaining about it. I had to really, again, try to search my thoughts and really think about is it really that bad? Am I just jaded like everyone else? And the answer is I am a bit. But I also have good reason for it because these characters I spent 10 years with, and again, no, I don't feel like someone spit in my punch bowl, but it's just like, oh man, so many things that could have been more satisfying weren't. And again, Dany turning evil, cool idea, too quick. Clegane Bowl was cool. It was done really well. Again, some good shots, some really amazing special effects, even though they forgot that King's Landing was near a forest and not a desert. It's another story altogether. I'm not going to talk about the coffee cup either. No point. But Clegane Bowl was cool. I liked the moment that Arya and the Hound had. I really liked that. It was a good moment of hey, you don't want to be me. Even though Arya kind of has done worse shit than Clegane, like poisoning and eradicating all of the Freys. But that's a different story. Arya has also survived 40 or 50 stab wounds and then went into a filthy sewer and survived on rest alone. So, she's amazing. So, yeah, I guess the other issue is the other issue I have with the final thing was Arya was a good character to show on the ground. I think that was all good stuff. It was like a POV perspective of this is how horrible war is. Look at these people that have lost their lives now to this Dragon Queen. Arya is on the ground, confused. She's still a person. She's not just a Terminator. At the end of the day, after all her training, after all her desensitization, she's still someone that can feel all this stuff and just be totally overwhelmed by it. It's disturbing. It was like a disturbing moment. And again, she turns away from that life because Clegane, one of her only friends, by the way, was like, don't do this. So that worked for me. I like that. I like when she called him Sandor. It was like a touching moment, and I was sad to see him die, the Hound, because he had a really great. There were times where it was over the top, but I really liked the Hound. One of my favorite characters in the whole show and the whole books too. And I enjoyed them together talking about stuff, and it was a nice character arc. And he couldn't really be redeemed, but in my opinion, he kind of got more redemption than Jaime did because of the way Jaime went directly back to Cersei. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's unrealistic, because it is very realistic. I know life doesn't work as a miracle character arc, but Jaime is my favorite character from the books, and I love the portrayal that Nikolai did in the show, and it was heartbreaking to see him go back on that because, he said there's a line in the episode, maybe the episode before, I don't remember, where he never cared about the people in the city. He tells Tyrion, I never cared about them. You killed the Mad King to save the people of the city, Jaime Lannister. Did David and Dan just kind of forget that that's like the whole crux of your character? And then he goes back with Cersei and says, it doesn't matter. And then the bricks made by Valonqar Construction Company fall on their head. You find out in the next episode, if they were 5 feet to the right, they would have survived. And you also see that it was like just a thin layer of bricks, just one layer, just one layer of bricks. They might have even survived that if Jaime just put his hand above their heads. Dumb. Again, dumb. A cool looking moment. It was nice to look at. It was dumb, but it was more than that. It hurt. I get the prophecy doesn't have to come true because it's just a prophecy. Which I'm not going to go into right now, but it's a big prophecy. Look up Valonqor or AR. I think it's spelled like that, the Valonqar prophecy. And it's what motivated Cersei to do so much stupid shit. So I guess I kind of wanted a little more from Jaime. Maybe he could have killed her to prevent things from happening, but then Qyburn gave the order. So Jaime kills her, and he thinks it's gonna, and then the bells ring. He kills her, and then then the bells ring, right? And then Qyburn is the one that lets the Scorpions kill Rhaegal in my alternate reality version. And then Jaime dies because the tower collapses because Daenerys thinks that it's Cersei in there and it's Jaime instead. I kind of would have liked that. Jaime crying with the lifeless body of the only person he ever really truly loved. He had to do it. He didn't want to do it, but Cersei would not relent. But he does it, and the bells ring and surrender, finally. But by then, Qyburn, just incidentally, was just about to... he hears the bells, that's the plan. He hears the bells, he has to kill the dragon, because that's the plan from Cersei, not knowing she's dead. By then, it's too late, and again, Dany destroys... That's my... again, I'm just spitballing. Maybe that would lead to other problems in the story, but it would have retained Jaime's arc. It would have given some motivation to Dany, and then the Mountain could have yeeted Qyburn the same way he did in the show a little later on. I don't know. It's just an idea. But again, stories are not real life. So George and the writers, mainly the writers, I think, were just like, hey, we got to make Jaime just a flawed gray character. We're going to have him die like that too. But it just was, I don't know. It was a little bit shitty. Didn't feel good, but whatever. So then Arya, at the end of the episode, rides out on a horse. It's symbolic. Do you get it? And then the horse disappears next episode. But, yeah. So the ending episode, Jon did very little. He was a very highly paid extra for that episode, by the way. Just saying, my queen, I don't want it. Oh God. So uh okay. All right. The next episode, David and Dan went on record saying it's going to be like Breaking Bad, where people won't be able to decide if it's an A episode, A, or A plus. They thought that they had written Shakespeare with the final episode. Okay. While I liked the final episode, I know I'm complaining a lot. While I liked the final episode of the show better than the previous episode, it still made very little sense at times. And the tone was all over the place. The first half hour of the final episode, I had to just accept this is who Dany is. This is what she did. That's fine. She is the Mad Queen now. She did these horrible things. She's gonna have to live with that, and she's going to. Lots of symbolism. By the way, that shot with her and the dragon behind her, everyone's saying it's a masterful, like, beautiful shot. Yeah, it looked nice. What was the symbolism there? That she's a dragon? We know. So it looked nice, but again, it's like throwing a bone. A lot of beautiful shots, but also it not anything that blew me away. It was just fine. I will say that the music has been amazing all season. So the music has been extremely helpful in selling some of this crap. But I love the first half hour to 40 minutes. It's slow. Tyrion, great performance by Peter Dinklage, sees his brother and sister dead, and he just is so upset at himself, at Dany. He throws down the badge later on, the hand of the king. You know, it's really good stuff. There's a lot of foreboding. You know, for a moment, I almost got some of those feelings back from the earlier seasons where I was like, oh shit, like I feel something. Like this is kind of crazy. What's going to happen? City's destroyed. It was either snowing or it was ash, but some of that ash melted when it landed on people, and it looked very, very, very much like snow. If it was snowing ash all that time, I mean, I get it. It looked beautiful, but it made no sense. You know, like it just, is that how that would go down? I don't know. But whatever. It still looked nice, and, you know, this foreboding. The conversation Tyrion and Jon had was ridiculous because, like, there's any question Jon is going to do what he has to do. His character arc is, he's an honorable person who went through a lot of shit. He died for people because he was too honorable. He's like his stepfather, surrogate father, whatever he is. Good old Ned. Rest in peace for this shit. But no, I sound bitter because I am. But really, Jon is a great person with a good moral compass, and he's like, I love her, Tyrion. I love her. And Tyrion's like, you still have a choice, Jon. And so eventually, even though I felt like that conversation was unnecessary, because Jon is just going to do the right thing anyway to prevent further bloodshed by the now Mad Queen. Aloha. Aloha. They're from Hawaii. They part, and even though Jon was stripped of his weapons to go interrogate the prisoner Tyrion, we as an audience suspend our disbelief when Jon approaches Dany with Longclaw and a knife. No problem. So Tyrion, yeah, no, take his weapons away. Daenerys, just, you know, be a good boy. Don't kill her. It's fine. Aloha. So I guess, you know, the whole thing that happened there was, I liked it. They didn't spend a lot of time on it, but, you know, there's the very predictable moment where they embrace. You know, Jon walks past the final boss, Drogon, but yeah, they embrace, and then he stabs her in a very predictable shot, which is that you don't see the dagger go in, but you see her face. Very predictable, dramatic moment, but I bought it because it was something, and I liked that we were getting something. And yeah, she died. This character that I didn't believe was a fucking complete monster up until apparently an episode ago. You know, someone we built up over 8 seasons, and I really loved Dany in so many ways and was rooting for her. I was then very indifferent watching her die because of what happened. Emilia Clarke became a great actress over the course of the show. I really believe that she's not good in a lot of other things she's in. She did a really nice job with Daenerys, and I think she sold it pretty well. Some of it she couldn't because there wasn't enough time, but she did a good job with what she had. And I feel like the death scene was pretty well done. And poor Jon, he's upset, and then Drogon shows up. He's like, "Hello there, human. I see what you have done. I'm angry." And then Drogon, because, he speaks English for the first time. I couldn't believe it. It was the most amazing twist Game of Thrones has ever thrown at me. And then he goes, "This is my throne now, small human man, who's shorter than most of the principal cast. I am now the watcher on the wall. I sit on the throne. You puny human cannot stop me." And then Drogon's like, "Wait a minute. Ah, I see now. It is the throne that is evil. I understand. It is power that corrupts, not people. The real villain was the system. I shall destroy it and carry Daenerys off to the land of my people, where she shall rest forever, and I will mourn her eternally. Goodbye, small human. I almost killed you." And then Drogon flies off, and sadly, we didn't get the Dark Souls fight that we all wanted. So that happened, and then a fucking really bizarre time shift occurs. It's several weeks later, I think, and Tyrion wakes up, and they go to the pit, and by the way, it's beautiful out. So if it was snowing, maybe it was snowing, I don't know, but now it's nice out. So they go to the arena. All the lords are there, including some extras. And Sweet Robin is now an adult man who is like Prince Charming. It's really weird. And Edmure Tully is back, and he wants to be the king. And so the whole scene was ridiculous because there was a lot of comedic moments. So the tone went like really gut-wrenching into comedy, and Edmure like trips over his chair and he wants to be the king. It's so weird. Anyway, Sam suggests democracy because Grey Worm demanded that something change, or rather demands a king so that they can judge Tyrion appropriately, which makes no sense, by the way. Quick aside, what happened to the Dothraki? There was still so many of them celebrating. Their leader is dead. Did they just go off and kill everyone? Do they have a new call now? Isn't Jon Snow their call? Does it matter? Guess not. So Grey Worm, who is now in control of the city, which just kind of makes me laugh, and he's like, he could have easily just killed both of them. I doubt someone like Grey Worm would have thrown them in jail, but okay, fair enough, I'll buy it. And they elect a king, and it's fucking Bran of all people. Raisin Bran became the king. It was, God. Here's the thing. I agree with the decision. I do. And I think it would have worked better if he wasn't such a wet blanket this season. It's not like Isaac Hempstead Wright did a bad job. He can stare into the distance really well. But it was just a bizarre thing, because he didn't want any power, and then Tyrion's like, "All hail Bran the Broken." And he's like, "Hey, wait a minute, dude, can you call me something else? Like Bran the Builder? Bran the Broken. All right." He's like, "Do you want it?" Bran's like, "Why do you think I came all this way?" "Oh, you wanted this. You planned for this, you sneaky devil. Wait, are you the final boss of the series?" "Nope. Don't worry about that." And now Bloodraven is the king, all right? All right. Weird. I'll take it. At least he's wise. He's benevolent. He doesn't want anything. He doesn't want to hunt boars, or he doesn't want wine or the breastplate stretcher. So I guess it's okay. But, it's funny because Yara Greyjoy is like, democracy? What, choose our own king? That they've been doing that in the Iron Islands for thousands of years. It's called the King's Moot. And she's totally against a lot of this stuff, to the point where Arya threatens to slit her throat, I guess. But then when they're like, "Oh, Bran should be king because he's got stories," she's like, "Okay." Most of the people there didn't even know Bran, I don't think, but all right. fine. We just give him the damn thing. Again, I can't help but find the logical fallacies here because I actually kind of enjoyed a lot of the episode, but it felt bizarre. Like for example, John getting banished to the Night's Watch. What are they watching? There's nothing up there anymore. So then Grey Worm, the only person who's holding John responsible, the only person who blames John, everyone else should be regaling him as a hero because he killed someone that just slaughtered thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. There's 1 million people in King's Landing. He's banished, and then Grey Worm fucks off to the islands of Nath, which they don't mention in the show, but there's butterflies there that kill people. Don't worry about that. So the Unsullied, they go off, even though Davos suggested that they start a family with, no genitals, whatever. Just bizarre moments and a lot of like weird comedy moments. But so then Grey Worm leaves, the Unsullied leave, and Jon is still banished, even though his brother is the king. And Sansa is the ruler of the North. No problem. She's the new, the North is sovereign, which she was definitely licking her chops over that one. She loved that decision. She likes being a queen. But yeah, the whole thing with Jon, I guess he wants to be. One line of dialogue would have fixed this for me, which is, Bran saying, Jon, you don't have to go up north. And then Jon's like, no, I do. That's my family up there. I don't feel right down here. All right, well, come back and visit. And then Sansa's like, hey, you can visit anytime you want. Grey Worm's gone. You don't need to be up north. There's nothing up there anyway. I like the wall. So maybe he could have just chosen that fate for himself because he doesn't feel like himself after what happened. But still, I feel like him being up north is a good end to the character. I feel it's very in line with Jon to have ended the show the way he did. He's up there. He got to pet Ghost, which the joke is that they filmed that scene 2 weeks ago after the previous snub happened, and they just took old footage and like CG'd really quick to get that in there, which I don't think that's true, but so he pets the dog, which was my favorite part of the episode. And I was really excited to see that, him reuniting with Tormund, and then the wildlings and him just go north, and you see a plant which, it's a little on the nose. Again, David and Dan thinking they're some kind of fucking geniuses. But it's like a pristine plant growing from the snow, which symbolizes that maybe, there's hope. A dream of spring, perhaps. And I guess they go, and Jon's maybe the king beyond the wall now. He got a good ending, in my opinion. He didn't want power, ever. Now he gets to hang out with Ghost and Tormund, and he can meet a new wildling who's kissed by fire, and hang out in more waterfalls. Arya becomes an explorer. That's weird. When did that happen? So she goes off west, which not to the Undying Lands where Frodo went, but rather to just find out what's there. And it just felt like, okay, well, I think she mentioned in the previous episode, I wonder what's out there. And now she's out there. Now, I didn't hate it because it's something that she's not going to marry Gendry. She's never going to return to her normal life because she's done a lot of bad shit for good reasons. She's seen a lot of bad shit for bad reasons. And, she's got to go and do something else. She's got to go and adventure. I guess I get it. It was a little bizarre seeing her as a pirate captain, but I still feel like it's in line with her character to not just settle down and have a happily ever after with Gendry, and rather her just going off into the sunset somewhere. Sansa becoming queen, she wanted that. Sansa annoyed me. She was smart in a lot of respects, but then she was really stubborn and awful in other respects, and I guess the character just annoyed me. But she got to be queen of the North, and that's good. I mean, I'm proud of her. I'm happy for her. At least a Stark has the North. I don't think she'll be a bad ruler. She might be a little catty from time to time, but that's okay. So now the Beyond the Wall is controlled by a Stark. The North controlled by a Stark, and the Kingdom controlled by a Stark. So that's, very interesting. the remaining children became, the leaders of Westeros, and no one seemed to complain about that. Everyone's all right with it. The government changed too, obviously, which I think was nice. The democracy thing being laughed at, I was hoping it wouldn't end with democracy because it just felt weird. But I'm glad that they at least elect their king. So it's monarchy, but different than it used to be. The Targaryen bloodline presumably is just now gone, unless Jon has a child. But and who knows what the hell happened with Drogon? Even at the council, which we need to discuss for a moment because it was ridiculous. The council where Bran is like, I wonder what's going on with Drogon, and then he's like, I will find out, and then just fucks off. It's like, oh, you did a lot, Bran. Good job. You sure did a lot this season. Nice work, buddy. Here's a medal. The council was ridiculous. On one hand, I was happy that Tyrion is the hand of the king. And you go back to several seasons ago when, he's in this room, which was not destroyed, by the way. And, he's fixing the chairs because he wants to make it presentable. And, he spent more time fixing the chairs than Dany did dying, but okay. Sam being Grand Maester was cool, even though he's not qualified. Don't worry about it. He could eventually learn. He learned a lot already. That's cool. Brienne is the leader of the Kingsguard, which is great. I think that's perfect. That's how I would like to see that end, and I'm happy she is the leader of the Kingsguard. She deserves it. No complaints there. And Bronn, Bronn is the master of coin. He's a greedy, selfish piece of shit who probably has several different strains of syphilis. What does he know about being the master of coin? Also, where did the Dothraki go after all this? The Dothraki, after all this happened, they just left too, I guess. Whatever. I don't know. So many weird things. But yeah, Bronn, he's now the leader, the Lord of Highgarden, and he's the master of coin, and it just felt very forced. Again, it's nice to see all the characters together. It was a nice little touching moment on an emotional level, which is why I'm saying emotionally this episode was more hopeful. I was a little more satisfied because it felt like, okay, well, some of these characters are off to have their own adventures now, and I at least felt good about Brienne and Jon and some of the other characters a little bit. Davos definitely belongs on that council. I'm glad my boy made it to the end because he's one of the best characters. I don't feel like Davos was totally character assassinated because he still, he just went along with a lot of it. The worst that he got was in the previous episode, The Bells, he was in the front line of the fighting force, even though he's not a fighter. So that was odd, but Davos definitely belongs on the council. Yeah, so, and then, they just joke about whores and brothels for a while. Again, the tone of this show, of this episode, was just so fucking bizarre. And they're talking about bringing back whores while rebuilding the city. And then it zooms out, and I guess then the stuff, it starts to end. Brienne updates Jaime's logbook, in the whatever it's called, the Kingsguard book. And she writes a nice entry for him, even though deep down she's like, that jerk. So Jaime kind of got some redemption because, even though he did have that one moment where he went back to Cersei, like an addiction, he still did honorable things throughout the series, eventually. He did some horrible shit, but he also did a lot of good things. In the book, he's much better. And he gets rid of Cersei real quick. And I'm wondering where his character is going to go in the subsequent books if they ever get finished. So that was it, I guess. I might have missed something, but before I do Q&A, I just want to say that the end episode and the end of all of this, I feel so little. I'm still excited for the books, but at the end of all this, seeing the characters kind of go off in their own ways and finally putting a cap on everything in a very predictable kind of safe way in some ways, aside from the Daenerys stuff. Um, it still feels like, King's Landing looked beautiful again. But I didn't feel very much. I was happy. I was like, all right, this is okay. This ending it could be better. It could be worse. It just felt like an ending, and I was just happy that it was over. But I did still get some enjoyment out of the season. Some really good character moments, some really good action. It's just, for me, it's like almost watching two different shows, and this is going to be remembered for a long time as a blunder, a cock up, along with Dexter and Lost. And it's a shame because it's a shame that this might taint enjoyment of the earlier seasons, knowing where all of it goes, because seasons 1 through 4 are goddamn amazing. 5 is a little shitty, but it's still pretty good, and 6 is actually genuinely a really, I think, a great series still. So I really hope, and again, if you don't agree with me, these are not the word of God opinions. Like, everyone can feel however they want. I would hope you enjoyed it and got more out of it than I did, because then you're happier than me. That's great. I don't care if, people disagree with me, because this is just how I feel about it. And I'm really happy that we did get some good out of it, but I just mostly wanted more and didn't feel very much, especially considering there were moments where, like, when Jon and Arya reunited, I had a tear in my eye just because I'm a baby. But I also really loved those characters coming together again, because they loved each other. They cared about each other, and they hadn't seen each other in 8 seasons. So, and then by the end, I'm just like, oh, she's a pirate. I was like, what? So, I wanted to say there's a plot line in the book, Young Griff, that apparently there's people talking about, that I think is going to be really important, and then I'll do quick Q&A. The stuff in the book with Young Griff, they claim they're grooming him to be the king of Westeros. Aegon Targaryen, they say that's one of the Targaryen bloodline. I don't remember the exact details, so I'm going to get it wrong. But he is the rightful king to the Iron Throne. Tyrion learns about this. Varys is in full support of this fake Aegon character, who is, I'm pretty sure it's explicitly revealed that he's a fake, and it doesn't matter if he's the real Aegon or not. What matters is that they groomed him to be the king. The blood does not make a goddamn difference, but through these characters grooming him, and also through the characters, like Varys supporting him and having all, like, the side of justice with this character, they can rule Westeros in a just way, in the way they want. And it, I think they were going to attack Storm's End in the book, I'm pretty sure. So this fake Aegon character is kind of cut from the show completely, which makes Varys a totally different character path. Like, his path, his choices are different. So much, I think, is different, including Dany's fall, because this character is not in there. And I think George introduced the character in book 5 simply because he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to wrap this up. I'm going to need some more motivation here for my characters. I need this character. And I think that the young Aegon thing could very easily completely fucking destroy Dany's, sanity, make her paranoid, questioning everything, and definitely contribute to her becoming the Mad Queen, along with many other factors, hopefully. And it would sell it a bit better, especially considering she's done all of this stuff. She's freed all these slaves. She's suffered so much. And suddenly this kid comes along who is gaining the support of a lot of lords because he could be the king. Doesn't matter. You can't do a blood test to find out if he's a real Targaryen. Just, he looks like one. Good enough. I think it's really something I totally forgot about until recently, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm reading about it, and I'm like, oh, that could be that could be good. That could add more tension. That could add more, weight to this whole thing of who's going to be on the Iron Throne. And so that's a big thing. That's a big plot line. The books definitely have a lot of divergences. You can watch like Alt Shift X or some other channel or read about it. There's so many other things like the Theon stuff where they leave off. Stannis is not yet dead in the books. Um, who knows where Jaime's arc is going to go? Again, I know that George R. R. Martin told David and Dan how their series was going to end, but that doesn't mean he gave them everything, nor does it mean he is going to stick with that. I read a comment online that I loved. It was that the Game of Thrones TV show was a beta test for what not to do in the Ice and Fire books. Where, again, I feel like it could go down in a similar way, but in a much more satisfying way with some alterations and modifications. So, but there's no doubt George is going to be aware of this horrendous backlash against this ending. And there are people that like it. It's not subjectively, it's not objectively bad, I don't think. I think it's sloppy and it's rushed. And if they wanted to do everything they wanted to do successfully, they needed at least another 4 episodes for the season. And even then, it would still feel rushed. But some people like it. I've seen people already saying it was a good season. But for me, and all I can do is speak for myself, as a big fan of this shit, it felt like a letdown. It felt like a different show, and it felt like things weren't. Just they didn't work for me. That's all. And I'm not gonna sign a petition to refilm it. I'm not gonna be like salty about it. I'll be all right in a day or two. In fact, I'm all right now. Like I got bigger problems, man. But it's a great show that got kind of rough for me, and I'm eagerly awaiting the books if they're really happening. I hope they do. And maybe one day we'll get a spin-off series that'll be kind of cool. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I'll tell you what. Finally, the actors. There's probably a video compilation you can check out right now of the various actors of Game of Thrones being asked in interviews, "What do you think of the final season? What do you think your character's arc in the final season?" And Emilia Clarke sarcastically says, "Best season ever." And then John, or rather, Kit Harington's like, "Disappointing." Like even the actors kind of had issues with all this, including Euron, because this character kind of sucked. Speaking of Euron character sucking, real quick, can we talk about how he swam hundreds of leagues or whatever so far away from his boats to the exact spot where Jaime Lannister was going to be at that exact moment, just so they could have a pointless sword fight? Really just awful. And he's like, "I fucked the queen. I killed the Kingslayer." Terrible, 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 rotten character. Just really bizarre that he was there at that exact moment. So many dumb little things like that just contributed to this. Like Jaime running up the stairs with 2 severe stab wounds, all the way up the Red Keep, all the way back down, and he's still standing. Dude. Just dude. But again, not all of it was bad. I didn't hate it. I am not, it's whatever. All right. So, thank you for listening to all this. For anyone on Full Sauce watching this way after this discussion, I have a chat here. There's a couple people. I'd say maybe like 80, 90 people, something like that. And we're just going to do a quick Q&A. If anyone wants to ask me any questions, remember that there's maybe a 30, 40-second delay. So it might take me a little while. But ask away. Tell me how you feel. Ask me a question. If there's anything I forgot you want me to comment on. I'm not a professional. Warning, I am not a professional, but I'm happy to talk about it. I'm super happy that people want to hear my thoughts on this shit for some reason. It's cool. So happy to do it for you. Vinny, did you already go over how the dragon is either super smart or super dumb? Well, according to Game of Thrones lore, the dragons are about as smart as people. Maesters surmise that dragons might be even smarter than people. But yeah, they can do really whatever the plot needs them to do. Will Drogon voice be an official guest voice on the regular streams? Ho there!
Little man, it is I who will be the king of the seven realms.
Um, favorite character, Jamie in the book. I like Davos and Jamie. Vinny, who had the better title, Frodo of the Nine Fingers or Bran the Broken? Could you imagine that's your title of king, Bran the Broken? I guess he doesn't care. He doesn't feel anything. Maybe he should have been the final bad guy because all the, scheming led to lots of deaths. Maybe we need Game of Thrones season 9 to go into how Bran or Three-Eyed Raven planned this from the start and is actually a bad guy.
Oh there, child. It is I, Drogon the Dragon. Yes, I've been capable of English speech this whole time. It is I who will sit on the throne now, little man. How come you're so short? You're like 5'5" compared to the rest of the cast. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to insult you. It's fine. Doesn't matter.
What was your favorite battle? Battle of the Bastards, maybe, or probably Blackwater? Would you ever rewatch the series at some point in the future? Yeah, I mean, I've seen all of the first season like 4 times. I've seen, second, third, fourth, and fifth seasons several times each. I've rewatched these episodes a lot. Like I used to watch them and then midweek rewatch them and then do another rewatch before the series started up again. So I've seen most episodes like 3 or 4 times, and I might reread the books at some point. But for now, I'm not going to rewatch. I would certainly do a full rewatch, just start to finish, because I do love a lot of those things that happen in the earlier seasons. And just because something has an ending I don't like or care for, it doesn't ruin the good times from earlier, in my opinion. Any other shows on HBO you'd recommend to others? Chernobyl, for sure. Westworld is good. Season 2 is wacky, but they just showed a season 3 trailer for Westworld, and it looks pretty good, even though it doesn't look anything like the previous seasons whatsoever. But they used Pink Floyd in the trailer, so sign me the fuck up. Has your perspective of the characters of the books changed? Sadly, a little bit, even though I don't. The characters in the books are different from the characters in the show, and there's still Lady Stoneheart and so many other things that are just not in the show. But you can't help but have some of that seep into your enjoyment of the books. Like, for example, my image of Jaime Lannister is Nikolai Coster-Waldau. Tyrion is Peter Dinklage. Some of the things they do in the show I remember better than in the books, like, because it's been a while since I read them, but I've seen the show recently. So yeah. Vinny, that voice sounds like Matt Berry.
What? We're going to turn into a bat?
No, it doesn't really. Would you still recommend watching the show? Yeah, because there's a reason the show got so popular. It's really great at times, and it kind of changed TV a little bit, or it was on the cusp of changing TV into much more serious, more serialized things that were not Monster of the Week entirely. And I mean, we've had that before, but there's a level of writing that just it brought with it. And the Ned Stark stuff, for example, here's this character you think is going to be the main character, and then he's not. And then the stuff with Rob, it's just this, it's really like a roller coaster of a show, and I loved every minute of it up until, whenever. What spin-offs would you watch? I'd watch Robert's Rebellion. I would watch The Fall of Valeria. I know there's a talk of a show being made right now, a spin-off show about the First Men, which I don't really think I care about as much, but okay. I'll watch. I'll check it out. Thing you missed most from the books that didn't make it into the show? More direwolves, Lady Stoneheart, which some of you know about. I'm not going to spoil it. And I missed. I tell you what, I don't miss Dorn. Dorn was better in the books, but I still found Dorn to be a little bit boring. Feast for Crows was still the weakest book, but I miss that stuff, and I miss um just the way it's written, the way the world building works, the way the characters, the way George writes characters. Um, what else is there? Have you heard the audiobooks? I've heard them. I didn't follow them. I read them. I only listened to some of the audiobooks. Vinny, do you think George R. R. Martin's writing style attributed to how the ending was not as satisfying? I think the way he writes is he only has a rough outline of what's going to happen, and then he likes to write as an adventure. Like he kind of just lets the writing happen, and I think he gets more enjoyment out of writing in that style instead of planning it out on a graph. So I think he was going to do 3 books. That was it, and then 3 turned to 4, 4 turned to 5, and then 5 turned to 7. Because for him, the writing gets away from him, and he really does write with this focus on the characters doing what the characters would do, and that leads to some complications. And in order to solve some of those problems, you need to create new characters and therefore raise new problems, which is why I think he's having trouble with the next book, and which is why I think he's historically been very slow with this stuff lately, and why the TV show ending was difficult. So yeah, I think his writing style definitely contributed. Do you think the new Lord of the Rings Amazon show will fill the void of high fantasy-esque medieval shows? Well, Game of Thrones isn't high fantasy necessarily. It only has sprinklings of it, especially when you first start watching. It's not until much later that you get, full dragon, weird magic, and ice demons. I mean, you get some ice zombies early on, right in the first moments, actually, of the first episode. But you kind of forget about them for a while. And ultimately, the show is more about people. So I think Lord of the Rings show, I hope it's good. They're spending a lot of money on it, but you can't just throw money at something and then it's good. But I think it'll fill a lot of voids if it goes over well. If the show ended well, would you recommend the show over the book? Yeah, I would, because I think it's easier to digest a show, and a lot of people don't read. And these are very, very, very long books. I mean, it took me a long fucking time to read them. Years of... No, that's not true. It took me many, many, many months, but then Dance with Dragons came out, and that took me a while to read, because I came back to it much later. So, yeah, I would probably just say watch the show entirely, forget about the books. Now I would say maybe do both. Let's see. Got a couple more minutes. Vinny, do you think the Night King should have been the final villain? Yes and no. I think the Night King should have gone south. They should have lost at Winterfell and retreated. And Cersei's army should have had to fight them, the Night King, as well. And maybe the Night King could have carried over, but it would have been sloppy. And I guess I kind of understand the perspective of the monsters and the ice zombies weren't the final villain. It was our own evil within us all. I kind of get that. And it also kind of reminds me a little bit of the way Lord of the Rings ends, which is the Scouring of the Shire, which is they defeat Sauron, and then the hobbits go back to the Shire. And I know George wanted to write an ending similar to this. The hobbits have to fight Saruman and a couple other baddies who are turning the Hobbit village, the Shire, into a factory in a wasteland. And the hobbits have to use all they've learned over their adventures to defeat Saruman. Whereas in the past, the Shire needed like Aragorn and the Rangers and Gandalf to protect them. Merry, Pippin, Sam, and Frodo are able to protect themselves and fight them off and have them fuck off so that they can rebuild and start their lives over. But I guess the point is that they don't just go back to happily ever after. That it's still shitty. And things are going to be different. And I think George said he wanted to do an ending similar to that. This is not that. But in some ways, they defeated Sauron, aka the Night King. And then it's the people that they had to contend with next. And it just so happens that one of them was a good guy up until the last moment. Again, it could work in the book. It could really, really go over well if it's written correctly. Or it could have gone over in the show if they did 9 seasons and built up to it a bit. I'm going to skip some of these questions. He even said, I never thought D&D would catch up. Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that they did. Okay, I think that's about it. That's. I can do one more question if anyone has one last one. This is the last Game of Thrones discussion forever. So, I mean, if there's a spin-off and it's any good, I'd consider doing, a video after every season. But here, instead of answering a question, I'll just say this, even though someone's probably going to ask one. I respect the actors. I respect the directors, the set and costume designers, especially Ramin. Is that how you say his name? The guy who made the music was fantastic. Visually, sometimes things got a little, kind of sloppy. But mostly, and that's coming from, I don't know what I'm talking about perspective, but I think mostly they still nailed it up until the end. And they worked real hard on this show to bring it to life. And it was mostly a big success, and it definitely was a huge event for television. And it turned into this fucking giant thing, which who would have ever thought? I remember when the first episode aired, people were like, yeah, it's cool. Fantasy show. I heard about it. I was like, okay, whatever. And then by the time the season ended, it was like, no, you got to watch that, Vin. You really have to watch that. You go from 2.2 U.S. millions, excuse me, 2.2 million U.S. viewers from the first episode to 13.6 million live U.S. viewers on the last episode. Absolutely mental. So, yeah, crazy. Who would have known it would have gotten that big? Vinny, which spinoff would you prefer? I kind of answered that, but I think ultimately it would have been maybe Robert's Rebellion would be nice. I wouldn't even mind a sequel, just following different characters with Sam and some other ones popping up every now and then. But I wouldn't mind the destruction of Valeria. That stuff is really interesting. The Last of the Dragons, stuff like that. So I guess that's about it. That is about it. Thank you for listening. Hope this was in some ways cathartic. Again, I don't hate episode 8 the way some people do, or season 8 rather, sorry, because it definitely spat on a lot of character motivations and it kind of annoyed me. But, there were some moments where I was genuinely gripped and interested, and there was some stuff in there that reminded me of why I love that show to begin with. My disappointment is immeasurable because of so many other things. And in some ways, I can't even blame them. They spent 10 years of their lives, David and Dan, working on this show. They hit the highest highs that you could possibly hit for a TV show, and then they had to end it without any source material, just a couple notes that George gave them. So I have a bit of sympathy for them because they tried their best. You know what? No, I don't think they did. If they wanted to try their best, they would have given it to someone who could finish it. properly. Like, they would have given it to writers that could have really spent the time needed. But I think the narcissism of them wanting their names on the last episode, I think that definitely didn't help. Them being sick of the series because they did it for like over 10 years didn't help. Them wanting to do the Star Wars movies, they want to get started on these things right away, hurt the show, which is why they should have given it to some writers that were really passionate about this, that could have maybe did a little bit more. Apparently, I don't know if this is true. This might just be hearsay, but apparently George was, he was pretty heavily involved in the first couple seasons of the show, and then he became less and less involved. The rumor, and again, it's just a rumor, the rumor is that they stopped listening to him as much, and they were taking less and less of his suggestions, and he was becoming dissatisfied with some of the direction. And if you notice, he barely talks about the show now. He hasn't, and like, he does a little bit here and there, but he used to really like blog about it a lot and talk about it a lot, do interviews, much less so. And the rumor is that David and Dan kind of wanted to do their own thing, which could have fucked the show ultimately. Maybe this is a cautionary tale of hubris. Yes. Maybe this is a cautionary tale. Maybe it's just, don't put your name on something that you can't finish. Maybe give it to some other writers and go do Star Wars and be producers and let people do their seasons. HBO wanted to give them several more seasons because it's a cash cow. Here, have up until season 10 episodes each. Maybe with that, it would have been done right. But now instead it's going to have to forever be, this, which again could be worse, I guess. So, but I guess I'm overall still just, I'm satisfied enough by the final ending that I'm okay. It's not great, but it's okay. I'll take it. Let's hope George finishes those books. I want to see what he has in mind. Okay, I'm done now. I ramble. I can talk for hours, especially about something I like talking about. I'm going to go now. I'll see you on the stream. Thank you for listening. This will be on Full Sauce, unless it already is on Full Sauce and you're watching this in the future. In which case, what's the legacy of a show like 10 years from now? What are the spin-offs like? Am I dead? What happened to the world? Are we still here? Are we playing Nintendo Switch 4? Well, see you on the stream. Thanks. Kid, just kidding. Did I subvert your expectations?